Welcome back to Get Tied On. I'm Tom Amello. He's Michael Kipnis, and we're back for another week. We hope you're enjoying meeting our guests in the winner's circle, and we'll talk about this week's guests after this segment. And this is And Away We Go. 9 days in the books here at Saratoga. Michael and the usual suspects are atop the trainer and jockey rankings. We'll talk a little bit about them. Did you ever think Chad Brown would have 14-1 winner loose running him down?
Every meet he seems to have one winner that everybody overlooks.
Everybody ignores.
Especially I think he had a couple winners. Oh, he had a winner the first week, or I don't remember when, but he had a short price horse and the longer price horse won.
Well, that happened.
Yeah,
and happened.
That's about uncoupled entries.
That's for sure. I think there are three people we need to talk about in the trainer ranks. Mark Cassie started off very well. We're looking to talk to him, aren't we?
Yeah, I ran into him yesterday watching one of his races at Woodbine, him and his wife, and I talked to him and I asked him if he would be on the show, and he said he would be delighted. And I do have a lot of questions just that popped up. He has actually, sons that are trainers. One is a young, like just out of college, that's starting out, and he lit up when he talked about his sons.
Well,
but he's a two-time Hall of Famer.
Yep.
Hall of Fame in Canada, Hall of Fame here in the U.S.
Sherry DeVoe having a stellar meet. She prepped with Chad, I do believe.
That's correct. She was his assistant for a few years. She married David Ngordo, and David Ngordo is one of the top bloodstock agents in the game.
One and one makes two, maybe?
1 and 1 makes 3, buddy. That's what I say.
And Horacio De Paz, this guy can flat out train, and I think last year he had a lot of seconds in the monies. This year he's getting the donut.
His horses have peaked for this meet. You can see it. He wasn't as potent down at Belmont at Aqueduct, but he's very live. I missed on a best bet one of his losers here, but ran too good to lose at 5-1. But he's had some good ones.
And I want to give an old track fact salute to trainer William Morey. He put one over yesterday or Sunday in the last race from post 12.
It's always the post 12. It's always the horse that's on the other side of the page. That's the last horse that you don't get over.
But I got to tell you, Wiz, because I was lucky. I scoped this one out. This horse was
top. You had it on
absolutely.
Top? Okay.
This horse.
Track salute.
That's right. This horse was coming synthetic to turf, and he did the same thing in 2023. So I just figured, well, if it's good for 1 year, it's probably good for another year. I took a shot. He came running down the stretch like a runaway freight train.
And you want to know something? He's the only horse. They actually was the only horse in the field for a tag.
Yeah.
Everybody else wasn't in for a claiming tag. And guess who? He doesn't own the horse anymore.
Yeah.
You know who reached in and got it?
Who got it?
Brad Cox for Sandy Goldfarb.
There you go.
That's a dynamic duo.
Let's talk about the jocks. Flavian Pratt, Irod, Gaffleone, no surprise. I think Ricardo Santana Jr., right? And Ramon Vasquez, who I know you know. In the morning, and not at the track.
No, at Starbucks at 6:30 in the morning, and he'll be on my horse on Thursday.
Okay, and Dylan Davis. I don't think anybody is unhappy when anybody from the Davis clan has success here, and a full win Saturday is a home run. It's Grand Slam, of course.
Yeah, I mean, all the big boys were out of town at Monmouth, and he took advantage, reaped the benefits of them being away and won 4. And it's nice because he's a Saratoga resident. He went to Saratoga High School.
Absolutely. You've got notes, so it's your time to talk about the 5 days of this past week. So
the weather held up. It wasn't as bad. The humidity wasn't bad. The first week was brutal. The humidity was brutal. So I had no bias. Basically, it's the only day I really had a bias, but it was at 2 turns. On Wednesday, and it was a speed favoring track going 2 turns. Race 3, Bellicas. I think another track fact winner, if I'm not mistaken, if Jeremiah Engelhardt, first time starter, right? At
Absolutely.
like 6-1, I think.
Yeah. He's tough to leave out, and I took a shot.
First time starter from the Bullfrog, Jeremiah Engelhardt. He's great with debut runners.
Absolutely.
You sniffed that one out, and salute to you.
Thank you.
Race 6. One of the strong angles, handicapping angles, are maiden special weights into maiden claimers.
Yep.
And Brad Cox struck with a horse named Hugh, a best bet for the Wizard that day. Strong angle, as I said, maiden special to maiden claimer. Race 7, Deck of Cards, won his 5th straight race on this day. You rarely see a Belterra shipper, a horse that he won at Keeneland, but then he shipped as his final prep for this race at Belterra. Now, Belterra is a grade D track, but he blew away the field. He comes up here, and the jockey wired the field, my man Ramon Vasquez, at a nice price. Mike Maker won 2 races on the card. Thursday, no bias, but again on the sprints of the turf, but again, speed very good, going 2 turns on the dirt. Race 2, Bruce Levine won another race. Actually, he won a race opening week. This one was with a horse named Stop Giggling. Levine's barn has been live this meet. Old timer, one of the old timers in the game.
Yep.
Race 3.
Stretch outs was always his forte.
Tom Amos with another Kentucky shipper wins race 3. Tipsy Ruler, a dropper that he won. Race 4, a very impressive New York bred winner from Tom Morley, Big Torpedo. Just getting better on the turf, has speed. I love Big Torpedo's stride. Morley does a great job.
Unfortunately, he was one I played against. Oops.
Okay, well, you take at this meet. Look, I could say the same thing. On Saturday, I took a shot against the favorite in the coaching club, American. There's no pride picking a 1-5 shot or 2-5. You got to take your shots up here.
Yeah, I mean, there was another one in a claiming race, even money, 5-2 in the morning line, bet off the board, and I think in a 20-25 claimer. Says I have a tough time swallowing that in those lower level races. Even when they win.
Right. Race 5, Squints, great ride. I love Rosario.
Yeah.
I mean, Rosario is the best on and off the pace runner. If you watch that replays inside, he comes out and the way he shakes up the reins. I mean, he actually willed this horse to the wire. He's willing an 105-pound guy is willing a 1,100-pound animal to the wire, just shaking up the reins. He gets within about a neck in the shadow of the wire. He's behind. What he does, boom, one stick. Horse puts its head in front, gets his nose down on the wire, and wins. In race 6, Cassie runs 1-2. Mark Cassie. He's been red hot.
Yep.
I mean, he's red hot everywhere. Wins a stake at Monmouth on Haskell Day with Get Stormy at a big price. When I ran into him in the grandstand, he was winning a race at Woodbine, wins at Churchill. I mean, that's amazing.
When he's standing in the clubhouse, he's going like this. Yep. He's looking at all the monitors.
Yeah. Friday, no bias on any turf, dirt, route, sprint. Test score, first time starter from Graham Motion. I don't know if you remember that one, but he came flying home late. I think this horse will improve going a distance of ground. Race 3, Unmatched Wisdom. 3 for 3 now, right? Main speed, ran well. I think that was the Curlin race, right?
Yeah, that was the Curlin. I thought it was interesting because there was no question in my mind he was the winner. But the ride was such that it looked more competitive than I think it really was.
And I don't think it was a great performance, to be honest with you. He was getting tested for class. He's still undefeated. He's going to get if he goes in the Jim Dandy, wherever he goes, he's going to be tested.
Not going to Jim Dandy.
Not the Jim Dandy. I'm talking Travers.
Yeah.
I mean, his goose could be cooked. Okay. Race 4, our man David Jacobson. I mean, when Jacobson scores, it's not ground round. It's porterhouse for 2. You know, and the guy is unbelievable. Who is he using on his long shots? Ramon Vasquez. Jacobson wins. That was his second ticket winner at a price at the meet. Race 6, Maker wins with another 2-year-old under whose radar. Remember the rail horse?
Yeah.
Showed big speed. Now this is where the works were slow. Okay, there was no indication that this horse had speed. When that gate opened, that horse had speed.
Gone.
And he was gone. Maker wins with this 2-year-old. Race 8, one of my favorite trainers that comes up here, Phil Bauer, will be a guest on our show, Get Tied On. He's a private trainer for Rigney. Scores with Princess Madison. It was a crystal ball best bet. Great ride by Jose Ortiz.
Yep.
Tremendous. If you want to see what riding's all about, watch that race and watch what he does with this horse. And that was his second winner. He scored with a horse opening day at 10-1. Saturday, July 20th, we can christen that day Dylan Davis Day. 4 winners,
Sure.
4 winners on the card. Race 1, Sherry DeVoe. Tremendous so far, tremendous meet. Had 2 horses in the race, the 2-1 favorite and a 13-1 winner. So the 2-1 favorite, both first-time starters, by the way. Everybody's tipped on the 2-1.
Profound, right?
Profound,
yeah.
right? And ran decently.
He had a tough trip.
Yeah,
he had a 2-1. There were trips in that race. Yeah.
Right. But no one
Not
talked
this.
about this horse. Okay. So again, another porterhouse winner.
I'm going to say this, Michael. She touted the horse in the Stables Tour in the Saratoga Special. And if you're not reading the Saratoga Special, you're missing on some opportunity.
Did you pick the horse?
Of course not.
Okay, me neither. So we all read the Saratoga Special, and everybody.
Actually, no. Actually, I'm going to say that I was remiss because I didn't look prior to the race. That was my fault because I usually read them, and I'm getting a little old, and sometimes I forget. That's what I forgot.
Getting old, but your memory is good because you remembered about that horse yesterday on Sunday in the last race.
No, I hunkered that. I hunted for that. This one I missed. Okay. You know what? You miss them.
Inexcusable.
I got one more.
Inexcusable.
I got one more for you when we get through the day. Go ahead.
So we got Sherry DeVoe has 4 wins at this meet so far, and she hasn't started a lot of horses.
Right.
Race 2, Robert Falcone, another trainer, claiming trainer, winter guy, right? Wins his 3rd race from 6 starters.
Yeah.
These under the radar trainers are scoring and eating good dinners right now.
They've got horses for the conditions.
Yeah, and all his winners are getting bet.
Yeah.
So they're a betting outfit. Okay. Race 10, oversubscribed. Chad Brown, ball horse from a tough trip. Just missed. All kinds of trouble. Lost by 3/4 of a length, was much the best. Remember that one?
I remember the race. I was against him because he was the beneficiary of a very hot pace in his previous race, and I didn't think he was going to get a similar setup. So I didn't have him. I had him in my top 3, but I figured. But he ran a winning race and got squat.
He had a really tough trip. Race 11, the Coaching Club American Oaks.
Right.
I took a shot with a Pletcher horse who ran second, was no match, Torpedo Anna. Now, here's a perfect example. You don't have to spend a lot of money if you got some luck on your side. They bought this horse. How much you think? Do you remember what they paid for this horse?
No, but
take a guess.
But I'm not going to take
a guess.
I'm not going to take a guess.
Why not?
Because this has always been now I'm got the trainer. What's his name?
Trainer of
McPeak. Yeah, this has always been McPeak's model for himself and his clients. They don't spend big money. So I don't know what he spent, but they get good athletes.
40K.
That's right.
40K, right?
Right.
I mean,
but that's his MO.
Well, it's his MO, but to get a horse to win, I don't know what the horse is worth now.
She almost fell down
She
that end and still won.
She stumbled, she rated, she easily went by. She's won 6 or 7 starts. She's won 3 grade ones in a row. The Fantasy, the Acorn, and now the Coaching Club American Oaks. I wouldn't be surprised if McPeak throws her into the Travers.
Well, it's a huge temptation. He said he's got to look at the speed figures, got to look at the numbers. We'll see.
No, look, if she was in the Travers, we'd have to take a long sniff at her.
Absolutely. She pulls weight and she's fast.
Sunday, final day. I thought now a bias return, but a different type of bias. In 2 turns on the dirt, favored closers and outside pads.
Absolutely.
I don't know how that happens, but it happens.
And it happened.
Right. Race 2, I actually had a nice pick there. A $13 winner, Broady Ferry.
Yeah.
From, again, our friend Tom Amos, Churchill Shipper, 3rd winner of the meet for Tom. Gaffleone aboard. Gaffleone's riding great. He had a really big week.
Yep.
Race 4. Now, I got to say, it's one of the great training jobs of all time. And you know who I'm going to talk about?
No, because I don't remember race 4.
Your memory's gone.
Gone.
It finally gone in the last 10 seconds.
Let's go.
Crayon Motion.
Oh,
1.5 miles.
Excuse me. I had that horse second, and I didn't have the chutzpah to put him on top. Pedigree play, the full sibling run on debut, 1.5 miles.
I mean, look, the horse is.
But I bet him.
Right. You bet him?
I bet him.
Oh, you cashed.
I can't.
Okay, good. You up for the meet?
No.
Okay. That's okay. You'll be there.
Well, I cashed.
You cashed. Okay. That's more than I'm doing lately at the track. So that horse, to get a first-time starter?
Unbelievable.
At 1.5 miles. And you know,
I'm glad they're running these races.
Yeah, I do too. But pace, this horse relaxed, sitting maybe 8 lengths back, swung out, showed some greenness in the stretch. Breeders' Cup turf, maybe. I mean, look, that's the time out.
No,
you know where we're going to see this horse? In some stake at Kentucky Downs. It's 1.5 miles.
Yeah.
First time out. This horse is going to roll up and downhill.
That's a great call. Kentucky Downs.
It just came to me.
But it was, but it was, those are that's an interesting puzzle. And to me, it's 2 things. It's digging through trainer stats. Who the heck runs horses at 1.5 miles on the turf? And not everybody does. Who's reasonably good? And then the pedigree. And, it's wonderful. It's a wonderful puzzle.
Jonathan Shepard, he did something like that. But the reason we don't see it much is they don't write them that much. That's right. And then, Gray Emotion, that's outstanding. Come on. And the horse took some sneaky money.
Yeah.
I mean, he was 7 to 1.
Yeah.
So I'm glad you collected, sir.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Race 5, stake race, Raging Sea, came up the rail. Pratt's winning this meet. If Pratt stays healthy, Pratt wins this meet, in my opinion. Yeah. Great ride. Gave Chad Brown. Now, this was teacher and student facing off with each other. You had Chad Brown, the teacher, with Raging Sea. You had Sherry DeVoe with my top pick, which was Shotgun Hottie. Shotgun Hottie goes off the favorite, 7 to 5. Chad Brown goes off at 8 to 5 with Raging Sea.
He's off poorly, right? Shotgun Hottie.
He was off a little poor. Paco Lopez was in for the ride. The pace wasn't fast. He was wide while Raging Sea was on the rail. Yeah. Raging Sea was going to win.
He was on the one. He took her off the rail. He wanted outside, as I recall. Paco.
Right away. He wasted no time getting outside. Right. But he can do that at Monmouth and get away with it. He can't do it at Saratoga against these riders. He always has a tough time up here. Yeah. He dominates other tracks. Here he struggles a little bit.
Good point.
A race 7. Welcome back, Chad Brown, to the winner's circle. 2-year-old filly, first time starter, wins named Virgin Colada. I like that name.
If I'm not mistaken, didn't that one come down the lane like a freight train as well?
Yes,
Holy
correct.
smokes.
Yep, and
Yeah.
won. I think the horse was 7-2.
Yep.
Chad Brown is amazing with these horses, and they
Off long layoffs.
but that was a first time start.
Right.
But I never saw, if you can dig down into your memory bank and find a Chad Brown first time starter that wins on the front end, I'll give you $5,000. Okay.
No, they have afterburners.
They have to come from behind.
They have afterburners.
Right. Race 9, Brad Cox and Godolphin hook up 10-1 first time start.
That was a miss. That was, you know, it's funny. I'm gonna say this. The handicapping rule is the most likely winner of a maiden special rate for 2-year-olds is a horse with some experience. I mean, the bottom line, experience means something. And so, I mean, I find it hard picking a firster, unless it's a field of firsters and just 1 or 2 with experience. But this was well meant and gone.
You know, is 10-1 dead on the board from Brad Cox and Godolphin? I'd say yes, right? I mean, no clockers catch it. It's not, I don't know if they bury the works or what they do.
Well, just remember, nobody calls me. They may call you. Nobody ever calls me.
Oh, they called me after the race to say, he forgot to give it.
Forgot to call you.
Yeah, right. Race 10, Moore's Law, 14-1. Who else?
Chad Brown.
Chad Brown, 14-1. And you know who had an outstanding day yesterday? Almost as good as Dylan Davis on Saturday.
Right.
Manny Franco.
Yes.
Franco.
Triple.
Yeah, triple. And Chad Brown, triple. Actually, Franco won 4 on Sunday's card.
Okay.
So he matched Dylan Davis. Chad Brown won 3.
I've noticed, I think Manny's got the game face on more than in the past.
Yeah, I agree. I go to the paddock, I watch, and I agree with you. He's very serious. He's a very good rider.
Yeah.
He's a very good.
He's a very good rider in what's always a tough column, right? And he doesn't, and he's loyal to New York. I mean, he's here most of the winter, and I don't think he goes.
He doesn't go anywhere. He's New York, you know. So that's all I got.
That's all you got. That's a lot. That's a lot. We hope you enjoyed that. This segment brought to you by WizardRacingSports.com. Away We Go is gone, and we'll be back with Phil Gleaves sitting in the winner's circle with Michael Kipnis.
Welcome back to the interview portion of our show. And if you don't know Phil Gleaves in the past, you're going to know him after this show. So welcome to the show, Phil.
Thanks, Michael. Glad to be here.
So we're the same age.
We are.
We're 67. We've been in the game probably similar amount of years. You know, I go back, well, as a kid to the 60s in the game. And I'm sure as a kid in Liverpool, England, you were in the game early, right?
Yeah, I grew up in Liverpool. North of England, grew up downtown. None of my family had anything to do with horses, but I loved them from a very early age. And from a youngster, I bet my first winner at 7 years old on the Grand National.
I beat you by 5 years.
Oh, there you go.
I was betting it too.
Wow. But always wanted to be around horses, went to a riding school, learned how to ride. And then from that day on, I wanted to be a jockey.
Okay. And were you?
I was. I rode my first race at 15.
Okay. Flat or jump or?
Flat.
Okay.
But I was already getting too big,
Okay.
even then. I had to make weight for my very first mount. I remember he was supposed to carry 98, and he carried 101. And I'd been in the sauna that day to try and scrape off every little ounce of body fat I could. Didn't turn out well, but anyway, I rode some races then in England, but I was already getting too big. The backstory to that is in Liverpool, in England at the time, you had to be 17 was the minimum school leaving age. You couldn't leave before that. and I had to get special permission from the Lord Mayor of Liverpool to leave school at 15.
Is it the same Lord Mayor that allowed the Beatles to come out and go to fly to the U.S.
It could have been.
appear on
It
Ed
could have been.
Sullivan?
That was a few. That was a few years earlier. It could have been the same guy. But I got a letter from him saying I could leave school, so I left school at 15 to become a jockey.
Okay.
And then, like I say, I was getting too big, and I was working in England, and I decided I wanted to come to America. My mother's cousin, who she hadn't seen in 40 years, lived in New York, and so the contact was made, and I would come out to live with my Aunt
Wait.
Maura.
So your aunt who?
Maura.
Okay, so your mother hadn't talked to Maura for 40
years.
And 40 years. And all of a sudden, she calls Maura
And
and
says,
says, "Hi, Maura." And she goes, "Who are you?"
yeah.
Right. And
This-
my son wants to live with you.
This is Isabel, who stayed with you 40 years ago when we were kids.
Right.
Right now, my youngest, Philip, wants to come to America.
And she says, "How much?"
But this is like at 19 years old.
Right.
So Maura says, "No, bring him out, send him out. We'll look after him." So I took my very first airplane ride
Right.
from Heathrow. I took the train down to Heathrow, London, and took my very first plane ride from Heathrow to JFK.
I remember that because you followed the Beatles when they came off onto the
Right. So this was 76, and of course the Beatles were 64. So I came here, stayed with Maura. Maura and the family were just welcomed me with open arms. I went to Belmont Park, gate 6 the next day. And the first person I was introduced to was Mike Kennedy.
Mike Kennedy. Now, is Mike Kennedy was the, if I'm not mistaken, the exercise rider for Seattle Slew
And he was a 2-year-old.
at a 2-year-old.
76.
And Mike Kennedy rode. He was from Ireland,
Mhm.
and he rode Seattle Slew in all the workouts. He really helped develop for Billy Turner.
He was an integral part of Seattle Slew's story. Seattle Slew would not be Seattle Slew without Mike Kennedy.
Now, I just talked to Mike Kennedy
Wow.
a couple of weeks ago, and if he was up here, I was going to put him on the show.
He would be a great
And he would,
interview.
right, but unfortunately, he's probably not going to be up here. But what a character that guy is. He's unbelievable.
So I met Mike, and he sent me over to a guy named Sidney Waters.
Ah, turf.
And and so I galloped for Sydney. Now, at the time, I hadn't got my work permit to work in the US. So, but I wanted to keep working, and Mr. Waters wanted to keep me working for him. So he said, "Why don't I send you down to my farm in Middleburg, Virginia?" So I got on a van at Belmont Park, and 6 hours later, got off the van in
With
Middleburg,
a horse van.
a horse van.
Right.
Got off in Middleburg, Virginia, looked around, and I jumped right back on the van.
To come back.
I said I didn't leave England to come to Middleburg. It was the same.
Right.
I wanted the nightlife. I wanted the city lights. So I came back and apologized to Mr. Waters, and I went back to Europe.
Okay.
That was 76, winter of 76. I moved to Germany. I rode 20 more races in Germany. And but the new world was calling me back.
Did you win any races as a rider?
I won one.
What kind of race was
It
it?
was a race at Hamilton Park in Scotland. The horse's name was Hunter Coombe Lad. He was like 7 or 8 to 1, going 1 mile and 70 yards. It was my second mount.
That must have been thrilling.
It was great. It was great. My mom and dad were there. It was wonderful, but I was getting too big, and it broke my heart that I couldn't extend my jockey career. So rode a bunch of races rode 20 more races in Germany to varying success. No more wins. And I called Maura. I said, "I'm coming back." She said, "No problem. Come on over." Flew into JFK. They picked me up at the airport. Now Maura had a friend at Bingo that knew Jimmy Ferraro Sr.
Okay.
Jimmy's
Right.
bloodsuck agent. Said, "Meet me at Belmont, gate 6 tomorrow." I did. He took me to see Lucien Lauren. and Lucian hired me as an exercise rider.
And what year was this?
77, spring of 77, April of 77.
So Lucian Law, okay, so Secretary had already run 4 years prior, 4 or 5 years
He
prior.
had a good filly that I started to get on named Pearl Necklace.
Better than good.
Wonderful filly.
Better than good.
So I spent the summer with him, came up here. That was my first year at Saratoga, working for Lucian. And then he was not going to go to Miami for the winter. He was going to go to Aiken. That was his winter bait.
Right, right.
I wanted to go to Miami. And so a friend of mine said that a gentleman named Woody Stevens was looking for an exercise rider because Tommy Wallace, who was the Eclipse Award winning apprentice, had decided not to work for Woody during that winter. There was an opening. I went to see Woody and he hired me, and that was the start of a beautiful relationship.
So Woody had been training several years prior to that. And so he hires you.
He does.
What was that interview like?
My friend's name was Graham Bell. He worked for John Veach. He galloped a filly named Devonna Dale and Al Mims and those good horses for Calumet. And I walked into Woody's office and I said, my friend Graham told me to come over and see you, Mr. Stevens. My name is Phil Gleaves. He said, do you ride as good as Graham does? I said, I ride better than Graham does.
Okay.
And he hired me on the spot. He said, I love your confidence.
I was just going to say.
And he hired me on this, because Woody was that way.
Right.
Bravado, that stuff. So he hired me on the spot. That was the interview was 5 minutes.
Unbelievable.
Yeah.
And so you start working for him.
Start working for him. The first horse I got on is a horse named Quadratic. Won the Nashua that year. Or 76, he won a Nashua.
So you're the exercise rider for
Quadratic now.
And
Believe It.
Right.
And other horses in his barn.
Now, obviously, everyone knows how great Woody Stevens. You could put him in the top few trainers of all time.
Mm-hmm.
Wins over 100 Grade 1 stakes. Does something that will never be done, ever.
Right.
It's a record that is and maybe even a better record than Joe DiMaggio's 56 game hitting streak.
It's perfect.
Never be done in our lifetime or ever, and that is to win 5 straight Belmont Stakes.
Correct.
Just to give you a little introduction of who you worked for. In my opinion, top 2 or 3 greatest trainers of all: Alan Jerkins, Charlie Whittingham, Woody Stevens.
Mm-hmm.
My opinion. That's my opinion.
Yeah.
Talk about going back, that era.
Yeah.
Those are the best trainers I ever saw.
They were.
So, and you can add Bobby Frankel into the mix. So he wins in 82 with Conquistador Cielo.
Right.
Okay. He wins in 83 with Caveat, then Sway, then Creme Fraiche and Dancing Connection. Did you, at that point in time, that was 82 through 86. What were you doing for Woody Stevens at that time?
So prior to that, 77, I was hired as an exercise rider. I started getting a lot of horses, good horses for him, and he saw some potential in me, and I wanted to better myself and become a trainer at that point. So I became an assistant trainer.
At what year was that?
That would be 79. He sent me on the road with a horse named Smart. And we went out that summer, myself, Smartin, and his groom, Ben Riley, and we traversed the country in a van, and we won 4 derbies. Illinois Derby, the American Derby.
Was he there for those races? Or
Woody flew in race day, night before the race, saddled the horse, saddled Smartin, and flew back out.
Right.
I was on the phone with him every day. He would instruct me what to do.
So now you're the assistant with all these great horses for one of the greatest trainers of all time. I mean, that's that's ridiculous.
Yeah.
It's unbelievable.
It really is. Looking back on it now, I was blessed.
So these horses that won the Belmont, you're still with him, right?
Yeah.
And you're his assistant.
Yeah, one of them. I would say it was probably his main assistant, but there were other assistants as well.
Who were they that became
Billy Badgett.
Okay.
He had a great career as a trainer, is now
Right.
running Gulfstream Park. Sandy Bruno, who then became my assistant. So the three of us were in the barn, in the two barns.
What was it about Woody? Like, paint us a picture of Woody Stevens as a human being and as a horseman.
As a human being, he was great. I saw many, many people come to him for help, usually financial help, sometimes other help, and he never said no. As a trainer, I was around the chief a little bit, Alan Jerkins, and I was around Charlie. When Woody would send me to California, we'd go into Charlie's barn. Woody was just the greatest trainer, and he was the perfect storm. He didn't play golf, didn't fish, they didn't have children. All he lived and breathed horse racing. Now, a lot of trainers say they do that, but they don't. He was 24/7. He would come back to the races in a suit and tie every single day. He would go to the races. Him and his wife, Lucille, would park at the barn, check the horses, go to the grandstand for the late double, the 8th and 9th races at Belmont, every single day. He was a great handicapper. He'd come around with Julie Fink, the Speed Boys. Those guys could handicap. Those guys knew what it took to win horse races.
My mentor,
I didn't
and I
know
talked
that. Yeah.
about it. Well, my mentor, I went to dinner yesterday, Tom and his wife, and me and my wife, with Bobby Duncan
Yeah.
and his wife. And I was telling the story how my mentor, who taught me, was the man behind Julie Fink and the Speed Boys.
Wow.
They buried bookmakers around the country. He was the greatest handicapper. He started the numbers before Len Rogozin started the numbers, and his name was Red.
Wow.
And he was not allowed at the Naira racetracks. He was penned as a member of the KGB, a Russian spy, which he wasn't. He was a taxi cab dispatch driver, handicapping the lobster shift in Brooklyn, and that's what he did. Okay, so when you mentioned
So Woody came around with Julie Fink. Woody trained for Julie Fink, and when you're training for gamblers, you can't make mistakes. You know, if you say to the owner, who's also a gambler, well, this one's going to win on Saturday, he better win. So Woody, getting back to Woody, he had honed his craft very early on, knew how to win, knew what made horses tick, could read a race better than anybody I've seen before or since. Knew exactly what horses could, and that was the whole deal with Conquistador Cielo. He won the Met Mile on the Monday, broke the track record. Woody had already handicapped the Belmont prior to the Met Mile, so he knew in his mind, if this horse runs well, and he's going to today, that's where we're going, because he knew who was going in Belmont.
That was the greatest strategy that actually worked to perfection.
Yeah.
Because he passes he has a foot injury. He has some sort of injury, right?
He
passed the Derby.
Yeah.
I think he prepped in a race prior to the Met.
Yeah.
He didn't run in the Preakness, but he ran.
It's called the Preakness Prep.
It was called the Preakness Prep.
Yeah. Right.
Then he comes back and he runs the Met Mile. He breaks the track record.
Yeah.
And he wins by 7.5 lengths. And an unbelievable performance on a Monday.
Yeah. And so now he wins on Monday. By Monday night, Woody's now announced the fact that we're going to run back in the Belmont in 5 days. So not only do you have this horse just broke the track record, he's by Mr. Prospector. They're not supposed to get 1.5 miles. He called up Seth Hancock, who's Woody's close or maybe even best friend. And Seth I'm not talking out of school here. He asked Seth, he said, I'm thinking about running this horse in the Belmont. What do you think? Seth says, I think he'll finish last. Woody was so sure he could not be talked out of it. We all, including myself, had multiple discussions all week. Woody, are you doing the right thing? So factor all that into the scenario, but also this. If you run him on Saturday, it's going to be Conquistador's 4th race in 28 days. 4th race in 28 days. So this is on top of everything else. Woody said he can't get beat. There's no way possible he gets beat. And he didn't.
And that's what makes trainers like him so great. I've seen that with Alan Jerkins.
Yeah.
It's the way they get into a horse's head. They understand the superstars
Mhm.
like they are. They just, I mean, I remember going into the barn of Alan Jerkins and his head was on the horse's head, just sitting on the head.
Yeah.
And you couldn't talk to him. And it's just, there's a communication. There's something that separates these people from, and even the way they work horses.
Yeah.
Charlie Whittingham, and I mention him because he won the race against Easy Goer in the Breeders' Cup Classic because he worked him 5 days before the race from the quarter pole to the top of the stretch,
Yeah.
having him accelerate to get the beat on Easy Goer, to be able to open up and Easy Goer not be able to run him down. A little idiosyncrasy like that.
Well, I'll give you one. Pink Eye rode him. Maple got hurt. He had ridden him in the mile on the Monday. He either got hurt or he's on a DQ or something like that. I think he got hurt. So Woody reached out to Pink Eye to come and ride him. And he'd never sat in the horse's back. And it was sloppy. We drew the outside post. Where we galloped every morning up Belmont, the horses would pull up from the gallop just past the gap on Belmont Park at the top of the stretch, at the clubhouse turn. So Woody told Pink Eye, and you can look at the replay of the race, to stay way out in the track after he breaks, because he thought if he pointed Conquistador Cielo to where he pulls up from a gallop every day, he would switch off and relax, and that's exactly what happened. So you'll watch the race. Pink Eye, they're coming out of the gate. The 7 or 8 horses go to the rail. He stays straight. Even round the first part of the turn, stays straight. And then the horse is now switched off. Then he drops him in. And now Conquistador's on the lead or laying second, totally relaxed.
Right.
And that's the key. That's the idiosyncrasy that wins the race.
I talked about that with Ramon Dominguez yesterday. The ability to get a horse to be balanced.
Yeah.
And to relax. And you got to do it. It starts in the early part of the race, right out of the gate. It's your strategy.
So now he wins by 14, and he's going to be syndicated for $36 million. But for tax reasons, they couldn't do it. It had to be 2 years after his purchase, and he was purchased up here in August. So the syndication didn't take place. The deal was made, but nothing on paper till August.
Now we have to say he was purchased for $110,000.
150. 150.
150.
Yeah.
Okay.
Here as a yearling.
Okay.
So 2 years later, the anniversary of that is when he could be syndicated for some tax reason. So I get to the barn one morning. Now nobody knew this. Nobody knew it had been syndicated yet. I get to the barn one morning right here, the barn where my horses are right now with David Dunk, that same barn. And at the end of the morning, Seth Hancock's in town. And at the end of the morning, he comes to me, says, Phil, I'm going to give you a check. I want you to deliver this check to Henrik de Kwiatkowski,
the owner.
Conquistador's owner, after the 7th race in the Jim Dandy barn.
So the check is in an envelope, right?
Check, no, check, just a check.
Okay.
So I got my tack cleaned, put my tack away, went to my car to go home. I just put the check in my pocket. When I'm in the car, I look at the check. It's for $6 million. It's a down payment on the syndication.
For $36 million, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, exactly. 36.4 million.
Okay.
So every day I used to go home from the barn and take a nap and then come back in the afternoon to go to races and to feed in the afternoon stuff. But that day I could not take a nap. I was just, I got dressed for the races. I came back, I parked at the barn. This is at the 3/8 pole. And I walked to the clubhouse. And usually I'm a very outgoing person, say hello to everybody, even though I know them, I don't know them. I just kept my head down. I was looking at the pavement all the way from the barn to the Jim Dandy bar with this $6 million in my pocket.
Okay. A folded check. Is your in here or in your pocket?
Inside of my
a jacket.
Yeah,
sports
jacket. I had
jacket. Right.
And gave it to Henrik, and Henrik was just cool as anything. I said, "Here's your check." Seth Hancock wanted me to deliver it to you. He said, "Okay," and just took it, went back to his drink like nothing. So yeah, that was the.
I mean, you're talking about the big money. I mean,
I guess yeah. Well, yeah. Anyway, yeah.
Had you met him prior to that?
Yeah. I knew
So
Henrik.
You knew him.
Yeah.
Okay.
I knew him well.
Where did he make his money?
Selling used airplanes to the Shah of Iran.
That's it. The used airplane.
That was the big thing. Yeah, made a lot of money doing that.
Boeing should hire him.
I think at some point he worked with or for Boeing.
Really?
Yeah, he had a very interesting, eclectic lifestyle.
So now how long did you work for Woody?
So I worked for Woody for 8 years. Yeah, 8 years. So I was getting on horses, and my job at that point was, I was his eyes and ears on horseback, if you will. Because I was growing out of my jockey career, because by that time it was over.
Right.
I didn't want to let it go, but it was over. I thought I had to do something else, and I became pretty proficient at reading horses when I was on their back. I knew, as far as times and stuff like that, all in my head, and I could really get a connection with horses. And to the point where I wanted to pay Maura back for putting me up. This is like a couple of years later, a few years later, I'm still living with her in her basement. My Aunt Maura, God bless her, she was working that time at a restaurant in the city as a waitress in the garment district.
Real? What restaurant? Remember the name?
Bobby's, owned by a man named Bobby Scavetto. Bobby's Restaurant. This is now back in the late 70s, early 80s. And I would say, look, she came home one day and said something like, well, the guys at the restaurant, I told them about you. If you ever have something that they can bet on, they would love that.
Right, right.
So I gave them a winner, and they were great. And then I gave them another winner, and then I gave them another winner.
Oh my God!
Because
Mark Man now.
Right, because all of Woody's horses were great, and so he had trained them to perfection. I knew they were going to win. I knew they felt good. I knew what their workouts were. So I knew when, a horse was in first time, he was going to win.
I wish I knew you back then. Okay.
Woody would never give them a race first time. He wanted them to win first time.
Right.
So I would give these. So Maura comes home one night and she says, the guys really want to be thankful to you, take care of you, take you to dinner, buy you a suit, whatever you. I said, no, I'm just doing it for you, Maura. You've been good to me. I'm trying to repay you. This is for you. So it went on, and I gave him a few more winners. And she comes home again. She says, Phil, you've got to let them do something for you. They feel like they want to. I said, okay, I want to go to Studio 54.
Okay.
I was big into dance music. I loved clubs. You couldn't.
You're a Saturday Night Fever guy. You love that movie.
You couldn't get into Studio 54.
No.
Nobody could.
Steve.
Yeah. Rubio.
Rubel. Right.
Rubel. Yeah. You couldn't get in.
No.
I said, I want to go there. So I tested them a little bit to see, how strong they were. So she goes back to work. She tells them. She comes home. Okay, you're to meet so-and-so in a restaurant in Manhattan Tuesday night. Whatever.
Now, I know this very well because I worked with my grandfather in a restaurant called Pier 52 on 52nd Street.
Okay.
And I was entrenched. And I grew up in Manhattan, and I was entrenched in that scene. So I could just imagine the bar, those guys at the bar, because that's when the advent of ODB started.
Yeah, sure.
And I mean, like, they were all gamblers.
Yeah,
Everybody was a gambler.
And everybody loves to bet on a winner.
Right.
Everyone loves inside information.
Absolutely.
They love it.
I love it.
Yeah. Even the horses, even money. I was told.
I'll take anything.
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
So I have to meet one of these guys in Manhattan at a restaurant, and I meet him for dinner, have dinner. He says, okay, I want you to go over to Central Park he gives me the
Have it on the green.
The address of the apartment. And I go over to this apartment. It's a penthouse apartment. I go up there. It's like 9 o'clock at night now. I've had dinner with him, and I'm going to this apartment and overlooking Central Park. I knock on the door. Door opens. It's Beverly Johnson.
Beverly Johnson. Who is that?
Beautiful black model in the 70s and 80s.
And that's
She's
going to
on
be your
Vogue.
date.
No. I don't know what's going to happen.
Okay.
So she opens the door. Come in. I've been expecting you. We have a drink. So now it's like 9:30, and I'm sitting there in Beverly Johnson's apartment. Her husband's in the back. They got a young baby. I sit there and I watch TV. Now it's getting a little bit later, and it's getting to midnight. Now I've got to get up the next day at 5 o'clock. She says, okay, we're going now, Phil. So we go downstairs. Limousine pulls up at the bottom of the thing. I get in the back of the limousine. Earth, Wind, and Fire are in the back of the limousine.
Unbelievable. Okay.
They've just cut a song called Boogie Wonderland. They just cut it,
Right.
and they're on the way to Studio 54, and they're picking Beverly up and me as well.
What are you wearing?
Suit. I don't remember.
A suit.
I don't know. I think a jacket and pants. I don't think I wore a tie.
Tight pants like John.
Yeah.
Okay.
I was thin at the time, so I could pull it off. Couldn't now. So get out of the limousine at Studio 54. There's a line around the block.
Right. Every night.
Yeah.
Always.
Beverly gets out. The seas part. She walks in. We walk in behind her. So I got my wish. That was a one bucket list item off the table.
So you go into Studio 54.
Studio 54.
Tight pants and your nice shirt open down to your belly
Right,
button,
and I'm
right?
hanging with one of Verdine White, who's one of the singers, bass player of Earth, Wind and
Did you
Fire.
dance? Oh,
Yeah,
yeah.
on the floor.
You
Yeah,
drinks, dance.
yeah, definitely.
Okay.
I got home at 4 o'clock or whatever, and went to work at 5.
Great. Unbelievable, right?
Yeah.
An experience you'd never forget.
It was wonderful. But that was my Morris story. That was galloping horses.
Right. And you're
how
paid
that
back
happened.
for all the winners that you gave the bar guys.
Yeah, it's great. They paid back in spades. It was great.
So then, so now, how long do you work? Like, what happens?
So now I'm working for Woody, and I'm just one of the assistant trainers, and I'm getting some notoriety in the form because I'm the traveling assistant, and I'm going out to Hollywood Park with a filly named Sabin to win the Gamely and things
Another
like that.
great.
Yeah,
turf
I'm
horse.
galloping her as well,
Right.
and I was blessed to be around a lot of good horses.
Were you thinking in your mind, I'd like to go out on my own?
Yeah, I was, and I had a couple of offers actually, and I always brought them to Woody. I wanted to run it by Woody, never wanted to do anything behind his back. And a couple of times he said, no, that's not the right spot, or, that's not the spot for you. And then finally an offer came in the winter of 83, 84 from Frank Stronach. And that was my first job as private trainer to Frank Stronach in Canada.
Did you have to, you stayed in New York, right?
No, I moved to Canada.
Oh, you moved to
I
Canada?
moved to Canada for the 85 season. Prior to that, though, and it must be noted, I'd gotten on, as you alluded to, Woody had an awful lot of good horses. I mean,
the best.
Taurus, Smart and Smart Angle, White Star Line, Believe.
No, it's just,
the list is endless.
it's endless. 100 grade one winners. Okay, come on. I mean,
horses. But one came along in 83 that was scary good. I should say, the winter of 83, 84, we took half a dozen babies to Hialeah. So he turned 2 in 83, rather. So we took a half dozen of the winter 82, 83, and he was one of them. He's a halo colt. And by this time, like I said, I was kind of scouting the horses in the barn for Woody from a rider's perspective, if that makes sense. So I'm breezing at Hialeah, and we're going quarter miles. And I'm on this horse, and someone's on the outside of me on another baby, and there's a young lady on the inside on this baby. And we breeze a couple of times, and I'm watching this baby on the inside, and he's going really good. And whereas my horse was coming off the bridle, her horse was struggling, this horse was going easy. I went to Woody, I said, that halo colt might be all right. I'd like to start getting on him. And he said, well, the girl Heather, she really likes him and she'd like to stay on him. I said, well, do you mind if I talk to Heather? I'd really love to get on that horse. So I went to Heather and I went to Woody and I said, look, because Woody always gave a bonus to the exercise rider and the groom of $100 for each win and 1% of each stake. So I said to Heather, look, I'd love to, this is 2-year-old, he's not going to run for 8 months. I love this horse. I'd like to start getting on him. Would you mind? And if you would agree to it, the first 2 races he wins, I'll give you my bonuses. So I started getting on this halo colt, and he was getting better and better and better. His works were more phenomenal. He was now named Devil's Bag, and he was going to be a tremendous racehorse. My good friend, my great friend, Ted Kozios, who became my assistant, went on his own later. Anyway, at that point, he was grooming for some other trainer, and we shared a house. And I would tell him when I thought a horse, if he, because he liked to bet like everybody else. He said, well, how's this horse today? How's that horse? And I would tell him. But I always tell him on the day of the race, never before. So I came home, and I distinctly remember coming home to our house that we rented on Spring Street right here. And I said, Ted, there's a horse running. This is now August of '83 right here. There's a horse running today that we really need to bet on. And he said, well, he said, let me put it in perspective. Is he the best horse you've ever been on? I said, he's the best horse anyone's ever been on. And that was Devil's Bag. And he won up here, ran 3/4 in 10.
Yeah,
First start.
another great horse.
Tremendous horse. So after that, that brought me. So he rattled off 5 wins. He won the race here, then an allowance race a week later. Then the Cowden, he broke the stakes record. Then the Champagne, he beat Seattle Slew's record. Then he went to Laurel Futurity. He won 5. So now he was syndicated for $36 million also. And a young cub reporter was dispatched from the New York Times, who now all of a sudden got back interested in racing because they hadn't been that interested. They dispatched Steve Christ to go follow this horse. So Steve flew to Florida and spent the winter with us in the barn with Devil's Bag. And that's how I first met Steve.
That's before he worked at the Daily Racing Form.
He was
well
a reporter.
Before. He was just
well
a reporter.
before. Yeah. And he said to me, we became fast friends. We both love music. We became fast friends. We socialized a lot. And he said to me, if ever I'm fortunate enough to have some horses in the future, I want you to be my trainer. And this is 1983. I hadn't even started training yet.
And it's amazing, as we'll touch on many years later, what happened.
Yeah. So that laid the groundwork for me starting to train in 85.
That's when you started as a trainer.
Correct. I spent I spent the winter of 84, 85 with Woody in our usual barn at Hialeah. And then I got a call from Frank Stronach. I told Woody about it. He checked him out with Dave Stevenson, who was then the racing secretary here. He said, yeah, I think you should go meet this guy. I flew up to interview and I got the job.
So you became a trainer.
Correct.
Was it a private trainer for Frank?
Trainer for Frank Stronach in February of 85.
Was he the owner of Wise Time?
No.
So that was a couple years
That was
later,
one
right?
year later.
1 year later. So now
So I started training, and fortunate enough, my first horse won. And then I had a nice horse for him named Norwick that I shipped to Sportsman's Park, and he won the stake. So things were going okay, but I wasn't happy not being in New York. So I stayed with him the whole summer. I went back to my winter base in Gulfstream, but I resigned from Frank Stronach, saying I wanted to be in the U.S., not Canada. And so I opened a public stable.
Right.
And the first person that contacted me was Russell Reineman, who had Wise Times. He had split with his trainer and wanted to split the horses up among a half dozen trainers. And just by the grace of God, Wise Times came my way.
We're going to take a short break now, and we're going to talk about Wise Times, which really put Phil Gleaves on the map. We'll be back in 30 seconds. Visit wizardracingsports.com and purchase now. Since 1986, the Wizard has been your source for the best handicapping products for the always challenging Saratoga meet. Wizard selections include analysis and wagering strategies for every race. Wagers are updated after late scratches. The Wizard wagers every day, backing up his opinions with his own money. Visit wizardracingsports.com and purchase now. So, Phil, I just want to, before we talk about your career as a trainer and Wise Times, let's go back to Woody Stevens, because, Chad Brown and Todd Pletcher have hundreds of horses, right? Chad ran 5 in the Diana, right? And actually did something unbelievable. He won his 9th straight Diana on Saturday. But he's got 200 horses, 300 horses, who knows? Pletcher, same thing, right? Woody Stevens, as we talked off camera, he had 18 horses.
Well, to be clear, he had... First of all, let me say that Chad and Todd both do a tremendous job. Tremendous job. Both excellent trainers. But Woody, there were stall limits then. So the stall limit was 36 horses, which comprised 2 barns at Belmont Park. 18 two-year-olds and 18 old horses, 3-year-olds and up. So the point is, those 5 years that he won the Belmont, each of those horses came from an 18-horse barn.
Right, which is just unbelievable.
It wasn't.
I mean, that's
yeah,
what's amazing.
That's the amazing
is that
thing.
you don't have
Yeah.
200 horses at different training
No.
facilities.
He
that
had
you can
18 to
pull-
pick from, and each year he got the Belmont winner.
Yeah, I mean, that's ridiculous.
Now, a lot of that is just providence, I guess. A lot of that is luck, but still, that's something crazy. It's just something, yeah.
So Phil, you go out on your own, and then did you have Wise Times as did you
No.
develop?
He was a 2-year-old in Chicago. He was stakes placed in Chicago. As I had said, Mr. Reineman had split with his trainer and divided his horses among 6 trainers now, one of whom was me. And you just picked them randomly, and I got Wise Times.
And as a 2-year-old?
As a turning 3, yeah, as a late 2-year-old turning 3.
Okay.
He came in like December, something like that. And it was turning 3 going into 1986.
So you take Wise Times. You've been training 2 years.
I've been training 1 year.
1 year. And you win. I don't know. I know the last race, I remember, but you win the Super Derby. You win the Haskell at Monmouth.
Yeah.
And then you win the Travers.
Correct.
With this horse.
Yeah.
In the same, within a.
So it was Haskell, Travers, Super Derby. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
In your first, basically 1.5 years of training.
Right. So we'd run him that winter at won a allowance race at Gulfstream. We shipped him out for the Louisiana Derby. He was closing to be 5th or 6th. Then we brought him back to New York for an allowance race. Allowance race didn't fill. I put him in at Monmouth. And it runs in an two other than over at Monmouth. And he won, but he ran a particularly fast time for that distance at Monmouth. Chris DiCarlo's on him. So I decide. Now, it should be said, I get back to Belmont, and I'm in the, I win a race. Before he ran, he was entered to run at Monmouth. Before he ran, I was running another horse at Belmont that day, or day before, and the horse won. And I'm in the winner's circle, and then there's a call comes from the judge's phone, which is right in the weighing area right there. And it's Lenny Hale. And Lenny Hale chews me out. Why did you put that horse in at Monmouth Park? He's in tomorrow, Wise Times. Well, the race didn't go here, didn't fill 3 times. Well, we don't like horses going out of town. You know, he was tough about it. So anyway, I ran him the next day and he won. And he ran a fast time, and Chris DiCarlo rode him. And I said, I'm going to run him back in the Haskell. 8 days later, took a page from Woody,
right,
ran him right back, and he won the Haskell in the mud. Now, we didn't know it at the time, but he was a superior mud runner.
right.
He's one of those that would get the asterisk in the racing form.
Spanish riddle asterisk.
Right, yeah. 3/4 and 8 and 2.
Right.
So he won that. It poured at Haskell. So we brought him to Travers, had dinner with Woody at the Wishing Well, night before. It's pouring. Woody's got Danzig Connection in the Travers, and I've got Wise Times. He looks out the window at the rain. Danzig Connection has won the Belmont in the mud. He says, we'll have the Exacta tomorrow. So we do. We backed into it. Wise Times won the Travers. Danzig Connection was 3rd, but Personal Ensign Angel was 2nd, but he was DQ'd because he fouled Danzig Connection or fouled somebody. So we had the Exacta. And then went on and he won the Super Derby at Louisiana Downs.
Did that propel your career? Did you start getting...
It did, but I wasn't too smart about it, and here's why. After that string, I got a bunch of horses, but I took every horse that was offered to me. Instead of saying, you know what, I need to get this type of horse for New York, I took them all. And then I said, okay, I'm going to put a division at Monmouth. And Ted, the guy I'd told about Devil's Bag, he was now my assistant at Monmouth Park.
Right.
And then I had some on the farm here, and I had some at a training center in Colts Neck, where Duarte trains now from. So they were all spread out, The management wasn't great, and I had a lot of mediocre horses.
That's what I marvel about Chad Brown.
They
About
and
how
Todd,
he can,
they
and
can
Todd,
do it. Yeah,
how they can manage it. It's a special. I
and
don't know what you know
and
how
I
hard
couldn't,
that is.
and I couldn't, and I came from the Woody school, and Woody pulled me aside and said, "Phil, this is not the way to go," and it was not something that he would do, and I was having trouble with it, and didn't want to do it, and so but Chad and Todd are exceptional at doing it.
Exceptional.
Yeah.
So did you sort of start self-destructing? Like, or I mean, did the like?
Well, it was very
It's very-
stressful for me. Yeah, very stressful. I was on the phone all the time. You know, I wasn't training horses. I was in the car. I was going between places.
And you were probably miserable. You didn't enjoy
Yes,
like
yes.
this is not
It's awful.
Phil Gleaves.
It's
This
awful.
is
I
not.
didn't want to do it.
So then
So-
what happened?
Well,
Like,
then the late 80s, that's when I first started coming up here in the off season and just had them all in one place because I wasn't getting enough stalls. This is back late 80s. It was tough to get stalls at Belmont. You know, you'd need 18 to give you 12. You had to put 6 at Monmouth or somewhere else. It was tough to get everybody in one place. So I said, the only way I can do it is to come up here and train off season here. So I did that very early on, late 80s, early 90s. I came up here and trained.
you didn't have any. Did you disband your operation at Monmouth and kind of consolidate?
I did. Well, yeah, I did. I had a few overflow down there. And the reason for that was at that point, I started working for Robert Brennan, Due Process Stable. Woody got me that.
Didn't they own Garden State?
Yes, he did. Yeah. And so I started training for Bob, and he liked to win races at Monmouth, and he liked to win races
Right.
at Saratoga.
Yep.
So that was the order. That was our mandate, if you will. These horses have to do the best at Monmouth because it was his home track, or up here where he loved to spend the whole meet. And so to do that, that's what we did. We just brought horses up here, and I trained a little bit differently. I wasn't. As Terry Meeks used to tell me, that I'd become a gentleman trainer. I was just training for certain meets rather than training year round, if that makes sense.
You pointed.
I pointed for Monmouth, here, Gulfstream. That was it.
And did you get the job
Yeah,
done?
I did.
mean,
Yeah, I did. We had some good years. Won some good races.
so at what point did you? So you're having success. You kind of have your template down
Right.
on how Phil
Yes.
Gleaves wants to train, and you're getting your balance in life, and
And so now it's the late 90s, early 2000s. And now I have a child and I'm divorced. So now I'm a single father on top of all this. And it's 2002, 2003. And I have him in kindergarten right here behind the racetrack, pre-K rather. And he has to go to kindergarten and I have to make a decision. And I made a conscious decision that I wanted him to be somewhere where he wasn't bouncing around schools. And so I said, I can either stay in New York year round or go to Florida year round. They were my only two options, I thought. And I chose Florida because it was warmer.
right.
And had some grass horses. So I moved to Florida and spent the next 20 years in Florida.
Training horses.
Training.
Right.
Had some nice horses down there.
At Gulfstream and Calder.
Calder.
Right. Was Hialeah still?
No,
It was.
it was gone by then.
Which
yeah.
was a sad
It was
day when
very
they
sad.
closed
Very
Hialeah.
sad.
That's one of
Yeah.
my favorite tracks.
And you know, it's a sad indictment on the industry that we can allow a racetrack of that magnitude to be where it is, you know.
And it was the Flamingos. There was something special.
And
The best dirt course.
the safest dirt
the
course.
safest, right.
One morning, I breezed Devil's Bag, and he went 3/4 in 109 and 2. Breezed. And the exercise boy for Swale, who was in the same barn, obviously, in our barn, didn't show up. He was sick, something like that. And so I breezed him as well that morning. And he went in 109 and 2. But they came back bouncing from that. That's the kind of racetrack that was. Very glib racetrack, very safe racetrack. That's why people used to love the winter there.
Right.
Yeah.
So you're down there raising your
Raising Skylar.
Right.
before my wife came into my life, Amy Dunham, and down there in the early 2000s, and struggling down there. Now, the guy that was the racing secretary down there, what's his name? Bobby Humphrey. He was the son of Gene Humphrey, who was a trainer in Chicago of Wise Times, the previous trainer. So he wasn't my best friend. So I struggled down there with stalls and stuff like that down there, but got going and got some nice horses down there, Mambo Meister and Chaba, nice horses that were in South Florida. Won a bunch of stakes down with those horses.
How long did you train in Florida? Did you? I mean, you
20 years, yeah.
20 years.
Yeah,
So,
summer and winter, yeah.
So, when did you get married to Amy? And
so, getting back to my exercise rider days, I'd gotten a bit of a reputation for being able to get along with most horses, if not all horses. And Bob Dunham's other daughter, Sarah, was his assistant. And she sought me out. They had a bad actor over there. And she sought me out up here to see if I would gallop him for them. And so I did. I went over there, met Sarah, hadn't met Bob yet, and then got on that horse every day before I went to Woody's barn in the morning up here. And then got to meet Bob and got to know him. Super guy, and of course he became my future father-in-law, but it wasn't yet. And interestingly, going back to the Travers, he ran a horse in that Travers that I won. Moment of Hope. He'd been second to Jim Dandy, and Bob put him on the lead in the Travers. I don't know if he meant to do that, but he was on the lead in the Travers. And to this day, he reminds me that he set up the race for me. And I think he's looking for a commission 40-something years later. And I keep telling him, no, I would have won without you. And we have this ongoing 40-year joke that Moment of Hope set up the race for Wise Times.
I just have to tell you that, I've made my bones as a handicapper playing, Aqueduct in the dead of winter. Supported myself on winnings and of course gave back a bunch of losses, but the two trainers that kept food on our table were Uncle Oscar Barrera, I refer to him as my uncle, and Bobby Dunham. I would have to say that Bobby was the cleverest, sharpest trainer that I've ever seen. I mean, in that period of time.
So getting on all these good horses for Woody meant that Woody was on the pony going out to the track with me every day, each set. We had a lot of conversation. And a lot of times it came around to trainers, and he'd give his opinion of trainers. That guy's good, that guy's not so good. He had the highest regard for Bob Dunham. And Bob is a super horseman, has no stock now. And of course, you need the stock. No matter how good you are, you need the stock. He was as sharp, I think, in the late 70s, 80s. I think he was as sharp as any trainer. I would see them, the late, last race, trifecta, get out, Mike Venezia.
Well, I was just
last swing out, down the outside fence.
Played for Baruch College.
It was
okay.
My wife can attest to this, but it happened too much to be accidental.
I wanted to keep him here to the show.
He was. I know you did.
I told you that I would have.
He would love to.
I would have, carted him. I would wheel him here.
Yeah.
I would do anything to get him on the set.
That may happen in the future.
Because let me tell you something. I don't think there's a trainer that I made more money with than Bobby Dunham.
He would love to hear that.
And especially when he used Venezia. He was he was the greatest setup trainer I've ever.
He would
in his day, I had to get into the mind without ever meeting him.
Yeah.
Right. It almost almost like there was the angel the devil and Bobby Dunham. Okay, and it was almost like a spirit when I knew
Yeah.
that a Bobby Dunham horse was live. And it's always, I don't think I've ever cashed on a Bobby Dunham horse less than 15 to 1. I mean, if he was 2 to 1, I didn't want any part of Bobby Dunham.
Yeah. No,
And-
yeah, exactly.
And I mean, and to be married to the daughter
So,
of Bobby Dunham,
right. So
I hold her next to the Pope. Like I mean,
I'd known his sister. I'd known Bob's oldest daughter, Sarah, and I'd known Bob. And then I met Amy, and we dated a little bit. And then we went our separate ways for 25 years. She had a relationship. I got married, had my son, and then we reconnected up here in 2009, and we have been inseparable since. And she's the love of my life.
2009.
Yeah.
And at 2009, had you stopped training?
No, I'm still training.
No, you were still
I brought a
training.
horse up here, Mambo Meister, for the Bernard Brook. He finished second. Yeah, so I was still training up until 2021.
So what did you ever, so when, I remember you coming back to Saratoga. I don't exactly know if it was at Belmont, but you had like back-to-back winners with Swamp Rat.
And yes and yes.
And yes and yes.
So we
I
had moved.
cashed on the Rat, okay?
Yeah,
that,
right.
that one I cashed.
So we
okay.
had we had decided that when our son was of college age that we would relocate to Saratoga. That was the plan.
Right.
We discussed it with him. That was what we wanted to do. He gave us his blessing. He went off to UF in Gainesville, and we moved back to Saratoga.
Right.
And so I started then training babies up here, and we had a lot of luck. Yes and yes, Swamp Rat, who you alluded to, they both won first time out, and yeah, we had some instant luck, instant good results.
Did you know they were going to win first time out?
Yes, I did.
Did you bet?
Yeah, yes, I did.
Good.
Yeah,
I'm glad.
and the reason I knew it, is because a lot of trainers, especially these days, don't want to get their 2-year-olds ready first time. They just, it's a philosophy. I can't say it's the wrong philosophy, but it's a philosophy, of, well, we'll just let him run however he wants to first time, and we'll build on that. It's a fine philosophy, but I came up under a guy that wanted to win first time.
Right.
They won. There's no giving him a race. He's not going to get beat because he's green. They won. All those great horses we discussed that Woody had, most of them won first time out as a 2-year-old.
Right.
Creme Fraiche, who went on to win $4 million and was running it, 5 years. So that was the Woody philosophy, which became my philosophy. So yes, I honed those particular horses to run their best race first. Not to run their best race, to be ready to win if they were able to, if that makes sense. They weren't going to get beat because of fitness, and they weren't going to get beat because of greenness.
So I have a handicapping question for you.
Yeah.
I don't remember what led me to bet on Swamp Rat the first time out.
And I don't either, because most of his breezes were done on the farm in Ocala.
Okay. Because I always wonder when a first time starter wins and pays off at 15, 20 to 1, you escape the clockers.
Right.
I mean, the clockers will nail down every,
right. Yeah.
So it wasn't intentional. You just knew you had some quality. You didn't.
Well, we knew from Florida training, he was okay. He was, he would on the dirt. We hadn't breezed him on the grass at all.
Right.
But because he was a hat trick, you would think he would move up on the grass.
Right.
So we put him in, and Dylan rode him, and he won and paid big price.
So you have this relationship with Steve Christ.
Yes.
For many years. He then goes from a reporter, a columnist, and he ends up running the daily racing form. Did you keep up your relationship with him through the years?
Yeah, it wasn't a phone call every week, but we stayed in touch. We saw each other here and there. He came to our wedding up here. We got married at Longfellows.
Right.
That's where Yes and Yes got his name. And Steve and Robin, his wife.
How did Yes and Yes got his name? How did he get his name?
So we got married at Longfellows, and the after party went till 2 or 3 in the morning, and my wife and I made sure everybody got away safely, and we went back to our suite in Longfellows. And we got back there, and both of us realized we hadn't eaten any dinner.
Right.
And so, because we were meeting and greeting and seeing all the relatives, you just forget stuff and you forget to eat. And so we were both starved. And I said, well, being the romantic I am, I called Domino's Pizza
Okay.
here in town, pouring with rain. And the guy picks up the phone and he says, yes and yes. And I said, sir, I haven't asked you any questions yet. He said, you're going to ask me if we're open and you're going to ask me if we deliver.
Tremendous.
I said, yeah, they're the two questions I was going to ask. So I ordered the pizza, hung up the phone. I said, babe, we have to name our next horse yes and yes.
You know, me and my wife were speaking about, like, when I retire, we're going to write a book. And our book is going to be about how names of horses are named, right?
Around. Yeah.
And yes
Yeah.
will definitely be part of a chapter in the book.
And
I
here
think
we are, he's 8 years old.
it's an extraordinary, how
Yeah.
horses are named
Yeah,
are just
right.
fantastic.
Yeah, so that's all from the guy that picked up the phone at Domino's at 2 o'clock in the morning on a rainy night.
I hope you gave him a winner.
So when I hung up the phone and told Amy what had happened, we then went to the fridge in the room, and the wedding planner had foreseen this and had stocked the fridge with food. Now we didn't need a pizza,
Right.
but we didn't have the heart to call and cancel. The kid was probably on his way already with the pizza in this driving rainstorm to deliver to some people in the hotel.
And did he delivered?
He did. He knocked the door. I got the pizza. I staked him good.
Right.
And we didn't eat the pizza.
Never, not even in the
No,
morning.
we
Not even for
No,
breakfast.
we maybe had a. It was Whitney night. Yeah, yeah.
You didn't eat the pizza.
Yeah.
Okay.
But anyway, but that's where we get the name.
So what is that? What horse were you? I know you came up to.
So Steve, you're
Right.
alluding to Steve. Yeah. So Steve circled back now. Now he's retired, and he called me and said, "Okay, I'm gonna make good on a promise I made to you in 1983, 84. I want to have some horses. You know, and we talked about how that would look, and he had a business partner, Ken Direct, who's become a dear friend, and the three of us went into a partnership of horses, and we bought some yearlings here. We specifically stay with New York breds,
Right.
for obvious reasons. It's the only way to go as
Right.
an owner. And so we started with a couple of fillies. They didn't pan out to be too much, but we were smart and got residual. We got good pedigreed fillies that would make broodmares that had residual value.
Right.
And they are now our broodmares of our horses here in New York, where we keep them. A Manchette filly and a Verrazano filly, and we're breeding from them now. And then we bought another couple. We bought a Candy Ride filly privately from Vivian Malloy, and she's turned out nicely for us. So, yeah, but we're heavily involved in the New York bred program
So to this day.
to this day.
So how ironic that Steve Christ and you hook up to win at Saratoga in the inaugural running of the Harvey Pack.
So by this,
stake.
time, I was getting towards where I wanted to retire, and that was in we'd won a stake with Thin White Duke as a 2-year-old, but now he had a poor 3-year-old year. Now he's a 4-year-old, and I'd for a couple of reasons I'd wanted to retire, and I met Ken and Steve, my business partners, at the Adelphi. I said, I need to talk to you about something. And I met them, and I said, I want to retire, and here's why. And I said, I think we should give our horses to David Donk, and here's why. And they were totally on board with that. And so we then transferred those horses to David, including the future winner of the Harvey Pack.
Unbelievable. I mean,
he won the Lucky Coin over the same course and distance the year earlier, and then he came back to defend that title in the renamed Lucky Coin, which is now the Harvey Pack. It was the inaugural running, and the Pack family was going to be here to present the trophy. Steve came up, not for any other reason. He wanted to see the family. He had the highest regard for Harvey Pack, and he wanted to be here for the inaugural running. We happened to have a horse in it, and as the racing gods would have it, Thin White Duke won.
unbelievable. Do you know what Harvey Pack's nickname was?
No,
Daddy.
I didn't know that.
Because he had an office at Aqueduct, in the bowels of the track. And, Howie Tesher,
Yeah.
would hang out with him.
Right. How he was a big
Paul
fan.
my good
Paul
friend
Corman.
Paul Corman,
Yeah.
the source,
Paul. Yeah.
me, Dave Litvin, uh, um, Andy Byer.
Yeah.
We would gravitate to see Daddy.
Yeah.
We pop in. That's why we were on the show.
Yeah.
Kind of.
All the sharper handicappers in New York were on the show. We're part of that team.
I was one of those people.
I know. Steve was. Serling was. A lot of.
He was one of a kind.
Yeah.
He was one of a kind. I mean, it's a day didn't go by that Daddy didn't hold court.
Yeah.
In his office, and always would be a daily double. Daddy and Howie Tesher.
Well, yeah.
Just a little side note
Yeah,
of that.
that's great.
But I have a question. Why did you retire? What was it? I mean,
2 reasons. I'd been doing it for a long time. We talked about it before. I'd started in horse racing when I was 15, and I was now 64. It was coming up in my 50th year of getting up at 4 in the morning. It was worrying on me a little bit. But secondly, and just as importantly, the staffing problem, the labor issue has gotten so bad in New York. I was having a lot of difficulty getting the help that I thought I needed to do the job properly. And I would tell my wife, I'd come home and tell my wife, I just can't do it this way. The people in the barn were not good enough. But that's all I was getting, because most of the labor force, and rightly so, were gravitating to the bigger stables to make more money, to make more bonuses. So what you were getting left with were the dregs, and it wasn't cutting it for me. So I came home and said, I'm going to retire.
And I can understand that from talking to trainers on the backstretch. Like, I am very friendly with David Duggan.
Yeah.
It's a family runner operation. His wife, Laura, exercises the horses. He has to split his barn at Saratoga between here and Belmont Park.
Yeah.
Added expenses.
Yep.
Right. You got to tack on more money to the owners.
Yeah.
Okay. And for the day rate, you don't make much money on the day rate anyway. So it's a real struggle. Then I got Eddie Barker, long time, Eddie been in the games for many, many years.
Yeah.
I've known him since the 80s. And, I have a horse with him, right, that is actually going to run on Sunday. He's not coming up here. He's at Belmont he didn't get enough stalls.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay. Which is weird, because he supports the game.
Yeah.
For all, and then you have other trainers, I don't want to mention names, that get 24, 25 stalls that aren't even support the game in New York.
I've never understood the politics of it. There are politics involved. I've never understood it. I don't to this day understand it. I don't know.
Right. And this horse Reddington's down at Belmont because his groom, who's a great groom, but he's slow as molasses, but he's great.
Yeah.
He doesn't want to come to Saratoga. Right. So that's the groom of this horse. You have to leave him down there. It's a weird dynamic.
Right, it is. So the biggest problem that smaller trainers, the 20-horse outfit, the 12-horse outfit, the biggest problem, other than not getting good enough stock, the next biggest problem is getting the help. So now you get the double whammy. I don't have the best stock, and I don't have the best help as well. It really makes it difficult.
So now,
and I fought it for a long time.
So you live at Saratoga with your wife, and your son is he graduated?
So he graduated from UF, and he now works for Microsoft as a software engineer.
Fantastic.
Yeah, he's doing well. We just drove to Little Rock, my wife and I, to visit him and his fiancée, and he's doing super. And we live in Ballston Spa, the next town over from here. We love Saratoga, maybe except for January and February, but we love it here.
And how many horses do you have in training with David?
We have pieces of 11.
11?
Broodmares and such. We have 4 with David.
4.
So let me go back a bit. The reason I picked David was also a Woody
Stevens.
When I left Woody back in '85 to go with Frank Stronach, he got my job. He filled in there. And David and I remain friends, and we've shared clients over the years. But more important than all that, David loves to run, and so do we. We love to run.
David is a great guy. I see him every year. I see him every year. He stops, we talk, and he's a gentleman.
But we discussed it, Steve and I, and Ken, to a certain degree. We just didn't want our horses to run 4 times a year. That's not us. We want them to run 4 times a month. if they're healthy.
Right. Right.
Because I think we underestimate how much horses can do.
Especially if they're relatively sound.
Right,
I
as
mean,
long as they're sound and healthy, and if the turf horses are even better because that doesn't take nearly as much out of them. So that was the reason for the choice of David, and David's been great. And we just came from his barn this morning. My wife and I went out there and spent some time with
a
him.
true horseman.
Yeah,
And a great developer
Yeah.
of horses. He just needs the stock. I mean,
Like
it's all
most-
about most. You
Yeah.
know, you can't make a slow horse run fast.
No,
You know.
you can't.
And do you
The times that he has gotten good horses, he's done the job. Award.
right?
Yeah.
Absolutely. So do you plan on starting any horses at the meet?
Yes, we're running on the 24th. We're running on the 19th at Laurel, but yes and yes.
Okay.
That was a softer spot for him. He's been running and needs some significant class relief.
Right.
So he's an allowance on Friday at Laurel. The 24th is snowy evening. She just ran last week at Belmont. She runs, God willing, on a week from tomorrow here in an allowance race. And then the 28th, Thin White Duke in an allowance race.
Back at Saratoga.
And then if he runs well on the 28th, he'll run right back in the Troy on the 3rd.
Well, I hope to see
6
you.
days later.
I want to see you back in the winner's circle.
Be nice.
I mean, that would
It'd be great.
And
You know what? It's not lost on us, Michael, how difficult it is to run horses at Saratoga with a chance to win.
tell me about it.
You know as well as anybody. It's just so when that happens, we relish it. We love it. We go out to dinner. We have a bottle of wine. We say, God, we finished third today in this race. It's awesome. We're just here. This is the pinnacle of the horse racing world right now.
Sounds like life is good for
Life is
Phil
good.
Gleaves and
Life
his
is
wife,
good.
Amy.
Yeah.
Huh?
Yeah.
I mean, you seem happy.
I am happy.
You know, you seem to have found your, what.
I retired for me at the right age, and I'm still heavily involved, but only to the degree I want to be.
Right.
I come out to the barn when I want. I leave all the decisions to David. He's the eyes and ears on the ground.
Right.
Because I know the right decision will be made, because it would be the same decision I made, because he learned from Woody.
And, we're the same age, and, it's not going to be long before I retire, but I don't think I'm going to retire from Get Tied On,
Right?
because I get to have guests like you
Oh, thank you.
and reminisce and bring people like you, class acts like you, onto the set to see, for the world to see, because that's important for me. That means something to me that selling sheets doesn't really give me the same, I wasn't going to do it. And my wife pushed me to do it, and I have less time to spend with her on the off days, but she knows how much I love this. Who's a guest I'm going to have on that and where we met with me and my friend Larry last year?
Yeah.
I'm having Joe McMahon on.
Oh, wow.
And I think that will be a great interview.
So, yeah, he'll be.
I mean,
he knows the
he's coming
game
on in a
inside
couple
out.
weeks.
We had horses at his farm. Thin White Duke was born at Joe's farm.
Yeah, I mean, I own 2 Central Bankers,
Right.
and that's done well. He's got Bucero.
Yeah.
I think he's got Solomini. That's starting off as a great sire. I mean, what a great family-run operation that is, huh?
Wow, super.
Thank you so much, Phil.
My
for
pleasure, Michael.
coming on. It was a real honor to have
Great,
you.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
that.
And we'll commence this come up with a third segment. And thank you for joining us in this special interview.
Welcome back to Get Tied On. I'm Tom Amello. Michael Kipnis next to me here. We sure hope you enjoyed the interview that Michael had just finished with Phil Gleaves. He's one of my favorite trainers, and I always look forward to seeing him up here. All right, Michael, Monmouth Park, the Haskell, Dornoch. Do you think he can win outside of post 1?
I don't know, but boy, has he impressed me. I mean, look, he wins the Belmont. He ran great in the Remsen as a 2-year-old. Now, I get a call a few races prior from my good friend, Brad Thomas.
Yep.
And he said, Wiz, the rail is dead. Toss out Dornoch. I had tossed him out on my own merits. And now Dornoch wires the field under pressure.
It's passed.
He
Actually gets headed.
mind frame, has dead aim like he did on the Belmont.
Yeah.
He hangs, he drifts out. Dornoch was, I'm a believer in him now. I mean, I don't, I missed the wedding twice. I may not have to be able to go to the funeral in the Travers.
Yeah.
But what could you say? My hat's off to Danny Gargan and his crew, right?
Yeah,
That $1,000 fine that he paid. You don't give a damn right now.
No,
right?
no, and he talked about not liking post one and wanting to walk, but everything worked out well. Mind frame seems to be a mind problem, if you will. Is he a hanger? Is he whip shy? Does he need blinkers? Does he need a bit? What kind of changes can Pletz work?
I think that owner Mike Rapoli needs a lot of wine because right now he's not a happy man. Right, I haven't seen him and his crew in the winner's circle for a while, and the so-called commissioner has got these horses that are, they got a ton of talent, and we're going to see one of them in the Jim Dandy on Saturday, Fierceness.
Yep.
What do we expect from Fierceness? Your guess is as good as mine.
Oh, and it's a guess, and sometimes you could look at his pattern as a good race, bad race, good race, bad race, good race, but who the heck knows? He's fortunate. It's another short field, so maybe he won't get in trouble out of the gate.
Yeah, look, he's a Jekyll and Hyde, right?
Yeah.
I mean, Sierra Leone.
I don't know where to go, but should he run from the rail so he can't?
You know what I think they should do? Blindfold him, right? Like put a mosquito net. We see horses with mosquito nets. I don't know. Like Chad Brown takes off Gaff Leone to put on Pratt. I didn't understand.
No change.
I didn't understand that move. He's breaking from the rail. Doesn't matter where he breaks. He's going to take back and make one run. I don't. Again, like what version are we going to see with him in deep stretch?
It's a funky field. You got Seize de Grays, who's enigmatic. You've got Fierceness, same thing. Sierra Leone. You have Seize de Gray. I can't catch Lucas. I could catch a cold better than catch
a winner from him.
Right, and this is not a bad horse under any circumstance. It's a gutsy horse. And then you got two from the Grade 3 Ohio Derby and a maiden. I mean, it's a Jim Dandy 6-horse field. I will say, in my opinion, by Saturday, that track won't be outside biased.
What? You know that? Were you a prognosticator?
I'm just saying it's Saturday. It's a stake Saturday, and I think that they go out of their way to watch the track throughout the day and speed it up and keep it speed favorite.
Well, there's going to be pace, right?
Absolutely.
Seize the Gray's going, right? Fierceness is going to attack. They're going to attack. The pace is going to be quick around the far turn, right? Should be. I mean, they're
the only two fronts. What are they doing? They're both going to hold.
Sierra Leone's going to lay back and make his one move. I mean,
what's the maiden do?
The maiden goes back to the barn. It's a maiden. He drops back into maiden special weight next time. It's one of those races.
Yeah.
There's questions more than answers.
Right. And it's all set up for what we hope will be a full field Travers. And another great race.
Right.
But we've got another week of racing. The weather forecast does not bode well. They're looking at 40% chance Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, if not 40 to 60, showers, thunderstorms. There's opportunities when the races come off the turf, but nobody's happy when that happens.
The fields get decimated usually, and but the weathermen, they're not always right. The first week they were not. I'm doing off the turf. You're doing off the turf.
Yeah.
They take it off one day, and the rest of the days when they expected rain, it didn't come. This weather's Sunday, right? So a friend comes to me. Went to the Wilton Mall, right? Torrential downpours in Wilton Mall, which is what? How many miles from here?
It's 4.
Right.
3-4 miles.
Here, overcast, looked like it was going to rain. Remember that?
Yeah,
It
a little
didn't
north.
rain.
It stayed north.
Yeah, it's north, 4 miles north, and
Well,
it's torrential.
y-
That
you know,
happens here.
I'm no meteorologist, don't get it, but my understanding is that somehow there's a trough with the mountains in the region and so on, and no one knows what's coming through that trough, whether it's going to move north, south, or just settle on Union Avenue.
Well, I'll tell you, Saturday, Jim Dandy Day, will be one of the most pressured days for the Wizard ever. Do you know why?
I can't imagine why.
I got my 4 grandkids coming
Oh.
up here, and they're going to have a Wizard sheet. And if I bury their bankroll, right, there's nobody left.
Papa's in trouble.
It comes down to my 4 grandkids this weekend for a big day on
that's good.
Jim Dandy Day.
That's good. Well, we're done. With grandchildren, we're done for this week. So we want to thank you so much for joining us on Get Tied On. We're delighted to have you as an audience, and we're delighted to do what we do and present to you the people that we want to present. So the show is brought to you by, you want to say something else?
Wizard Race and Sports.
I didn't
Now,
get
changed,
there.
but I changed the website.
Well, then
it's
you-
actually brand new, and you got to see it. It's all the shows we've done are archived on the website, and you can go back to last year and see some of those fantastic interviews.
Harry DeVallet,
One of my PJ
Richard
Campo,
Migliore,
Migliore,
Tony the Pony.
Yeah, there's a load of fun, right? It could actually be like a mini series, like we could create and sell it to Netflix.
There we go.
For $50 million, right?
I'd take less, but yes.
Right at this point, I take 500 just to have some money in my bankroll.
Well, thank you. Brought to you by Wizard Race and Sports. We'll see you next week with Get Tied On.
Visit wizardracingsports.com and purchase now. Since 1986, the Wizard has been your source for the best handicapping products for the always challenging Saratoga meet. Wizard selections include analysis and wagering strategies for every race. Wagers are updated after late scratches. The Wizard wagers every day, backing up his opinions with his own money. Visit wizardracingsports.com and purchase now.